Okay, well, hi everybody. We're on the Hope-Filled Fiction blog this week with Amanda Cox. Hi, Amanda.
Hi, everyone.
So I've had Amanda on here, I think every year for the past, I don't know, 3, 4 years,
Something like that.
something like that. And the last few times we've been able to get together in person in Tennessee. That didn't work out for us this time, unfortunately, but we have this technology where we can still meet and talk about Amanda's new book, The Bitter End Birding Society. So I'm excited about that for you all to learn more about it. But before we jump into talking about the book, I'm going to let Amanda just introduce herself to you if you don't know her or about her. So tell us a little bit about you, Amanda.
I'm a homeschooling mom from Chattanooga, Tennessee. I live here with my husband and my three kids and our cat and our dog. And I really enjoy writing stories about hope, healing, and home.
Mhm.
So that every book that you pick up, it's one of those stories that might have some challenging issues that are inside of it, but it kind of feels like a warm hug by the time you get to the end of it. And that's just the types of stories that I write. I've always been an avid reader growing up, and so it's really been fun to exercise the storytelling, loving part of myself over the past several years.
Yeah. And if you haven't read Amanda's books, you're definitely missing out because they're all fabulous. I mean, I've loved every one that I've read. So you're a busy mom, wife, you're an author, you have a lot going on, you homeschool your kids. So with all of that going on, do you have any hobbies at all? And if you do, have they found their way into your books?
So writing used to kind of be a hobby for a while, but writing became a job. It's a work that I love, but it is work. And so sometimes I find I need to have some other creative kind ways to, I don't know, unwind a little bit that isn't writing. But they always tend to rotate a little bit. Whereas writing is my constant, the other things rotate around. I might be baking, I might be beekeeping, I might be doing a really bad job at gardening, which my poor garden right now is completely neglected. It's really bad.
At least you're trying. I don't even do that.
I might need to stop trying for the sake of the plants. They're like, please don't try anymore. But uh and bird watching. So yes, my hobbies
Hmm.
have snuck into some of my books. If you've read He Should Have Told the Bees, that's from the beekeeping side of my life. And bird watching has been I'm not an intense bird watcher. I don't have all of the gear. I'm sort of a bird nerd who knows my backyard birds and the sounds
Hmm.
they make and things like that. But it is a hobby that kind of struck up when my youngest was born, and he was a very fussy baby who did not like to sleep more than an hour at a time.
Hmm.
And the only time he was happy is if I was standing there swaying with him in my arms. And as I was used to being out working and counseling and sitting down with people. And so I started watching my backyard birds, and it was kind of a way for my mind to kind of relax and unwind and enjoy God's creation in a different way that wasn't super involved. I didn't have to like be out on a hike or anything like that. I could just enjoy what was out there.
Yeah.
So bird watching has definitely snuck its way into the Bitter and Birding Society.
That sounds so peaceful. Just swaying with the baby and looking out the window and watching the birds. And I know I walk every morning, and as soon as I walk outside, I start hearing birds, just everywhere. And it just is such a peaceful feeling to be in nature.
So true.
Draws you closer to God. And speaking of your bee book, I was noticing the Afghan there behind you. It totally
Yes.
made me think about the cover of your bee book. Is
A book club made this for me. It was the
okay.
most generous gift, but they met in person with me and they had that made for me, which
Oh my gosh.
blew me away. So it sits on my writing chair
And so that was the book club for the
for He
bees.
Should Have Told Bees.
Oh my goodness. That is awesome. Well, they
Yeah.
did a great job because I immediately thought of your book when I saw it.
Yes.
Well, what about pets? You know, you have your birds in your backyard and everything, but those are not real pets. Do you have pets and do you put pets in your stories?
I have never put a pet in a story until the Bitter and Birding Society.
Okay.
And there is a rascally little show stealing German short hair pointer that tries to steal the show a little bit in the Bitter and Birding Society. And this dog is directly, completely, 100% inspired by our German short hair pointer named River. And so if you read the story and you hear about this mouthy, rascally, prone to run off dog, you will know what it's like to live with River and all her energy. And she brings a lot of joy to our family, and I think she brings a lot of joy to the book too.
I really enjoyed the dog. I'm not a huge animal person, not a dog fan, but I know lots of readers love animals in stories. And even though I'm not a big animal lover, I did love the puppy in the story. So
Yeah,
cute.
she's a lot of fun, and my character also likewise is not a dog
Yes.
person, and so
I could so
um
relate.
having this dog in the story presents a bit of a challenge for her in kind of a fun
Yes.
way.
Yes. And that was maybe why I enjoyed it so much because I could relate so much to her. Like, no, no way.
This is
Yeah,
not
that's not happening.
happening.
Yes. So we talked a little bit before I started the recording about kind of the imposter syndrome as writers and could I actually write a book or a sentence that really, means anything. What would you now on this side of your journey tell your younger writing self um, what you've learned?
I think a big thing that I have learned, and that it's kind of one of those things like I would tell my younger writing self that I don't know if my younger writing self would know what to do with it. But to trust my writing instincts,
Mm,
because I started writing as sort of an experiment. I really didn't have any, like, I didn't go to school for writing, and so I soaked up all the information that I could possibly find, which is not a bad thing. It was good to learn and to everything that I could about the craft and try to improve my writing and listen to the critique partners and things like that. But for a while, I was still trying to find my own voice as a writer. And I think sometimes I listened too much to, hey, this is the right way to write a book. And then as time went on, I would, almost be fighting my own process
mm,
and fighting my own storytelling style because I was trying to do it the right way because, my
mm.
personality, I'm always trying to do everything the right way.
Yes.
Um, so I would tell my younger writing self, hey, relax, learn, but also listen to your own heart, writing heart that God gave you. Like He gave you your style of writing, your style of storytelling for a reason, and listen to that.
I love that. That resonates with me because I've been right there, like, trying to listen to everybody else, they're further along than me and they know, so I need to do what they say.
Yeah.
Yeah. So along that same vein, it costs a lot to be a writer. I've spent, I don't even know how many thousands of dollars I've spent and haven't made a dime. So, what is the best money you've ever spent as a writer?
I think the best money that I ever spent as a writer was my first writing conference. And the reason that it was is, like I said, I started writing stay-at-home mom. It was an experiment to see if I could write. I had little ones at that time. And for me to go to that writing conference, for me, it was me taking myself seriously as a writer. Like, okay, I wrote this story kind of in the quiet of my own room, but to make that investment, to leave the kids behind at home when they're small, those things for me was a step out, kind of a step of faith, a little bit of like, okay, God, I feel like you've laid this story on my heart. I feel like you've put storytelling in my heart. So I'm going to take this step. And just to be, and walking into these sessions, I felt like the biggest imposter in the world. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to write a story. And I'm around
Yep.
people who are published, and I'm around industry professionals sitting down with them pitching. And I'm just
Yeah.
like, this is what in the world am I doing?
Yeah.
But the thing that I walked away from that is one, getting to know the community of Christian writers was a really big thing for me. Just to that there are other people out there that feel just like I feel, and there are people who have walked the path that I want to walk. And that was just really important for me, I think. And I don't think that necessarily always has to come through a conference if that's not traveling is not possible or the expenditure that comes with that is not possible. This one happened to be just a couple hours from my house, so that made it a little
Nice.
bit easier travel expense wise. And but just finding those ways of saying, hey, I'm going to invest in myself as a writer and take myself seriously. And that's why that was in particular an important um, thing that I did.
Mm-hmm. One thing I think of that too is, I never went to college after high school. My husband has two master's degrees, and he's gone to school a lot, and I haven't. And so I told him, "This is my education. This is in place of college. I'm going to learn about how to write." So
Yeah.
you got to look at it as an investment for sure. So let's talk about your book, The Bitter End Birding Society. What a unique title. And I know I just have to ask, is that a title that you came up with, or did your publisher give you that
This
title?
one, this one was one of mine. I was really hoping they'd stick with it because sometimes just almost a title will come to me like right with a story, and I'm like, I like this one. This is fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's very unique. So it definitely piques your interest just from the title. So talk a little bit about the book, the premise of the story, and what it's about.
So it's about this young woman who has gone through a traumatic experience in her hometown, but because of the way she handled it, everybody kind of calls her hometown hero, really proud of her. But she's like, I know the truth. I was not a hero. I made a situation worse than it should have been. So she's kind of had to figure out how to deal with this, what she perceives as undeserved praise her entire school year as a kindergarten teacher while she's trying to manage her own trauma in the middle of all of it. So for the summer, she decides I'm getting out of here. I'm going somewhere where nobody knows me, and I'm going to go get to know my great aunt, which was someone she had just kind of discovered through a college project. She didn't really know her that well, but she's like, "This is great. I'm going to get to know her. I get to be anonymous for a little bit." And she arrives in Bitter End, Tennessee, and things do not go as planned at all for her in this town. And before she knows it, she's sort of adopted against her will by this ragtag group of bird watchers. And along the way, she discovers that she has a connection to one of the bird watching members, a severed branch of her family tree that resulted from sort of a family feud that struck up when a moonshiner's daughter fell in love with a preacher's son.
Mm-hmm.
And so she kind of realizes the connection and that there are these two women who have known each other for 60 years. They don't live just down the street from each other, but they haven't spoken in all this time. And she wants to kind of get to the bottom of it all.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So it's dual timeline. So we follow two stories. The feuding ladies we follow in the historical account, which was interesting. And I will say the prologue of the story, oh my goodness. I got to the end of that prologue and I was like already crying. Like, oh my gosh, it definitely hooks you. I think more than any other story beginning I've ever read. It was,
Yeah, it was kind of funny. It wasn't supposed to be a dual timeline story
mm,
originally. It's going to be contemporary all the way through. It's going to be this ragtag group of bird watchers. But then when I made the journey to the real Bitter in Tennessee, it kind of switched things up for me. And the that past timeline just sort of hooked me, and I
mm,
had to write it.
that's awesome. So, Bitter End, Tennessee, this is the setting. Is that a real place or a fictional place?
So that was a real place. I when I was trying to decide the next book I was writing back before it was written, I was Googling weird Tennessee town names because there are a lot of them and they're quirky and fun. And then I ran across Bitter End and I was like, okay, who named a place Bitter End and why?
Uh-huh.
And long story short, nobody knows. Nobody really
Okay.
remembers why. So I had a lot of fun with that in the story. The little kind of like funny side element of the story where everyone that my main character asks has a different reason for how Bitter
Hmm.
End, Tennessee got its name. So it's fun. So we decided to go there because I couldn't really find that much information about Bitter in Tennessee online. So we're going to go there and you can put it in the GPS and it'll come up as,
Wow.
a place you can go.
Okay.
And we drove there and we are following the GPS directions. We drive up this mountain and we get to the top and they're like, "You've arrived." And we're like, "Arrived where?" Because there's nothing here. We expected to at least see like, the little green signs that say welcome to unincorporated area, whatever. There was nothing, but there were some Christmas tree farms and some houses and that's about it. And so we drove
Wow.
back down thinking like, I don't know if we like got it wrong, if the GPS was correct because the service wasn't great up there. And I go back down to neighboring towns, and everybody we talk to, they're like, "We don't have a clue what you're talking about. Like, we do not know what bitter end is."
Wow.
Long story short, and a lot of conversations we had with strangers, we were about to leave, and we stopped at Roan Mountain State Park, and we were in the gift shop, and my husband and I were chattering, looking at some of the maybe like the historical books of the area. Might have a mention of it in there somewhere. And the lady who was working overheard us, and she's like, "I know where Bitter End, Tennessee is."
Hmm.
And we're like, "Oh, really? Please tell us." And she, we were in fact in the right spot. And she started telling us about the people who lived there, and they were moonshiners for the most part.
Hey.
And so that is how the past timeline kind of got, I started thinking, I'm like, okay, if I'm writing this place and it's a real place, then I need a little bit of what Bitter End was really like back then in the story.
That is so cool. How far is Bitter End from Chattanooga?
It's about 4 hours.
Okay. Interesting. Now I want to go. Just check it
Yeah, it's beautiful up there. We talked to one person and she was kind of concerned that we went up there. She was like, "Was it safe?" And we're like, it was. Didn't get any like weird feeling like someone's going to come out on their porch with their shotgun or anything like that. I've been places that I felt like that, but it didn't feel like that to me. It was beautiful because you're up on top of a mountain, but then you're seeing, as far as you can see, you're seeing the tops of mountains from that view. And so
Hmm.
it looks like waves. It's so beautiful up there.
What mountain? Do you know what mountains are near there? Like from Chattanooga, is it southwest or south? I mean, north, there's nothing south of Chattanooga, but northwest or what?
It's north of like Gatlinburg Smoky Mountain area.
Okay.
So it's part of the Appalachian Mountain Range. I can't think.
Okay.
He's Old Buck Mountain is the name of the actual mountain that I was on. But there's the Appalachian Trail is like right in that area. So
Okay.
there's a lot of through hikers that come through that portion.
Okay. So, you have hope in your stories. It always leads to some kind of hope. How do you naturally incorporate that? And how did you in this particular story?
So I was thinking about that a lot the other day. A lot of comments that I get on the books that I write is that they don't shy away from hard issues, but they are dealt with gently and tenderly. And so I was just kind of like thinking about that fact, and it occurred to me, I'm just like driving around my car thinking, and I realized that that is how God deals with me. There's so many times in my life where I've maybe had to deal with some tough issues, or there's been a place where I needed growth or I needed to work on myself, things like that. And when God is dealing with my heart, I'm always in awe of how gently and tenderly that He always deals with those issues and the way that He leads me to places of growth. Um, and so when I write, I realize that that comes out in my stories. And that is how I deal with my characters. When I take them to those hard places and I put them in a place where they're like, okay, you have the choice to either stay where you are or you have the opportunity to grow and to find the hope and the healing that is right there in front of you. And I see it as a gift that I give my readers to deal with my characters in the same way that God deals with me. And whether it's a person in the story who is being that one that is gently and tenderly leading them and confronting them, or if it's a spiritual experience that they're having in the story. in this particular story, I feel like it comes a lot through the cast of characters around them. With the Bitter and Birding Society, everybody's got something kind of going on that they're dealing with. There's a reason that they're out there trying to seek peace in nature. It's because they have a lack of peace in their life in different areas. And this is kind of their respite from what's going on. And they kind of, the characters kind of wrestle, okay, where is my place? Do I need to say something about this? Or is this a space that I need to step back and wait and let God do that? Or is my time to say something in these areas? And so I think that's the way that hope and Jesus comes through my stories a lot of times. There might be a varying degree of whether scripture is shared or if it's an overt spiritual message, but there's always that underlying element where people are finding hope and healing and they're led there in a gentle and tender way because that's the way that God deals with me.
I love that. That's beautiful. So, did you learn a particular lesson through this story? Because a lot of times, as writers, when you're writing something, God has something He wants to show you or teach you.
I think this book in particular was a reminder to hold my plans loosely and to make room for God to direct and change things. Because, like I said, I really didn't plan on that past timeline being a part of the story I had in my mind. I'm like, oh, it's going to be this ensemble cast. It's going to be contemporary. It's going to be all about the Birding Society. Like that's what this book is going to be. And I had written probably not quite half of the book,
Mm,
and I was like, but then like these characters from the past were kind of like nudging me like, okay, tell the story. And I couldn't stop thinking about them. Like it was distracting me so badly. I couldn't
mm,
actually continue writing the story. And so finally I'm like, okay, this is not when I pitched this to my publishing house, it wasn't a dual time story or anything like that. And I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna do it. Like it might not work. It might like I might completely scrap this and it might not be actually a part of the final published work, but I could not get those characters off my heart and mind. I had to write them.
mm,
Um, so I think this book for me was just that reminder of like I like to have everything like I don't like unknowns. I like to have everything planned out. But just a reminder from God, like, hey, hold plans loosely. Be ready for the adventure that I have for you. It might not be what you expect, and might not be what you thought it was going to be, but just take the journey with me and see what happens.
mm. The writer in me is curious if you had to get permission from your publisher to change what you had pitched.
I didn't. I just wrote it. I wasn't sure how much of it, like if I had just gone completely and scrapped the birding society and the story that I had pitched, because the story I pitched was still there.
Hmm.
I just hadn't planned on weaving in a past timeline with it, and it fit along with what I have already done with them. So it wasn't like I was going way off script of something I'd already done.
Right.
And the story that I pitched was still a story, but it
Hmm.
was told in a different way than I had originally planned on telling it.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, that makes sense. So, when readers finish the last page and they close your book, what are you hoping they're going to take away?
I'm hoping they come away with a reminder to step outside and breathe some fresh air,
Mm,
to find a little peace in the great outdoors, because that's, what I like to do on a regular basis. I hope they come away with an encouragement in finding ways to forgive yourself. I think we forget that sometimes as a part of the forgiveness process. We like, okay, we've got to forgive other people, but I think so often we really do struggle to forgive ourselves and to have grace for ourselves. And it's a part of if God has grace for us, we should also have grace for ourselves. And so I hope those are some elements that readers take away.
mm. Well, like I told you, I finished the story just a couple of days ago and thoroughly enjoyed it. And I pulled up the review that I put on Goodreads because I felt like you had a lot of very quotable lines, like that really made me stop and think and ponder. And so, if it's okay, I don't think these give anything away to the story. Just to read a couple of them, is that okay?
Yeah.
Some of the quotes that stuck out to me. One is, just this once, she'd let all she'd been stuffing down spill out. Maybe then she could finally sort through the mess and decide which parts of herself she was meant to keep and let the creek water wash away the rest. Oh my gosh. That was so, it's so literary and beautiful, but it's also, you really stop and think about it, you know? So I just love that. And another one, just because something is lost doesn't change its worth. And it made me think about the lost people in our lives. Many of us have family members we're praying for to come to know Jesus. In the Christian world, we say they're lost. But that does not change their worth and their value, and that they are created in the image of God. So I love that. And real sacrifice don't happen because you want to be appreciated. It's done because it's what's best for somebody else. And there were just so many more just beautiful lines that really drew me in. And I thought, this is deep stuff, you know? Where do you feel like you get that inspiration from the Holy Spirit as you're writing? Do you ever like just stop and say, okay, Lord, I really need you to guide me right here. What do I say here? Like, I find myself doing that a lot because, like, I have no clue what to say, but God, you do.
I think a lot of times there are things that in one form or format or another, God's kind of whispered that to my heart at some point or another, where it's been a place where I've been processing something in my own life, and He kind of gives me that little nudge. And they're things that just sort of I think live inside of me. And so when I'm writing and the situation comes up in the story, and the character situation isn't necessarily my situation, but maybe they're experiencing an emotion that I've dealt with. I think they're pretty common to all of us, these emotions that we have.
Yeah.
And if it's those moments where God's kind of like nudged my heart, or places where He's brought me to think and ponder and consider and process my own pain, I think those spill out into the story a lot of times.
Mm, yeah. So I'm sure you're working on another project.
Yes, getting
Yes.
close to done. It's gets
What,
turned in just a few weeks, and as we're recording now. But
anything you can tell us about it? I guess it'll come out next August.
yes, it's set for next August. It's about this young woman who she doesn't have any happy childhood memories of her own. So what she does for a living is restore other people's heirlooms. And so she's got this restoration shop with a bunch of craftspeople who are experts in their field, and they restore people's heirlooms for them. And so she loves hearing people's stories and taking their heirlooms and giving them a new life and returning them back to them. And this has been a business that she's kind of built from the ground up, and this is her life, and she's happy running away from her old life. But one day, this mysterious package arrives at her shop with her real name on the address
Mm,
that nobody is supposed to know.
yeah.
And inside is a pocket watch. Her specialty is in restoring timepieces. And someone has left her this anonymous package and said, "We really feel like our family got this through ill-gotten gains, and we would like you to figure out who it actually belongs to." And she's not too thrilled about this. This really isn't her vein of work. She doesn't try to find who they belong to. She restores them. And about the same time, someone from her childhood also appears, and she kind of suspects him as having something to do with this. And she's very cynical about this guy because she's got some bad memories with him. But though she's not really keen on this idea, one thing leads to another, and she's on this whole journey to figure out the story behind this watch. And she realizes that it isn't one person's story, but it's many, many people's story. And so she gets to kind of find her own restoration through this
Mm,
process.
nice. Sounds good. Is this dual timeline or contemporary?
As of right now, unless something changes. It is contemporary, and I typically have multiple point of views, but as of right now, it's all told through her point of view. But what we do get in the story are elements of the past, but they're bits and pieces of other people's stories that make up this Watch Us story. So it was really different story for me to write, but it was really fun.
Mm, sounds good. I know it's going to be good. I've loved all your books, so I'm sure that will be no different. Well, our time is up, sadly, but I've really enjoyed this conversation and getting a little behind the scenes with the Bitter End Birding Society. And so one of the people who are watching this who comment are going to win a copy of your book. So yeah, show the book. That cover is beautiful, isn't it? So
They did a good job on that.
yeah, it's really nice. I love the colors. Anyway, so thank you for your time, and I look forward to everything that's to come in the future. And keep on writing. Don't stop.
Thanks so much for having me, Dina.